Hello, everyone. This is Sync 57, and this is the official Sync 57 Sports Show. Don't forget, you can always follow us on TikTok at Sync 57 Sports. As a matter of fact, across the board, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and YouTube is all just at Sync 57 Sports. This is where the topics are briefly discussed, and the show is quick and to the point. Speaking of quick and to the point, let's jump right into it. OU, in the eyes of many, are officially out of the CFP. Baylor did the entire college football world a favor because not only did they finally snuff out OU this season the way KU couldn't but almost did, the same way that Texas couldn't do but almost did, was they gave everybody the knowledge and peace of mind in knowing that OU is not going to get a pass because they're OU, regardless of how weak that Big 12 is, and end up getting blown out by 30 to somebody in the college football playoff. 3 out of the 4 trips, not close games, blew the lead against Georgia, lost that game in overtime, and they were in there because OU is OU. And it's amazing to me that regardless of how weak that Big 12 is, everybody's talking about Cincinnati, including the committee, where they're talking about their schedule as if the Big 12 is so overly impressive that all these teams are having a difficult time with the University of Kansas at football. Not basketball, at football. The committee's entire idea, I guarantee you, was very simple. We're going to rank OU right there at the 8th spot. We're going to initially bring in Cincy at a 6th spot, move them up to a 5. They'll eventually lose, and we'll be able to go ahead and take a team like an OU or Michigan or whomever and go ahead and hurdle them over Cincinnati and probably drop them out of the top 10 and make room for somebody else. That, I guarantee you, was the goal. See, the committee's not waiting for Cincinnati to win. They're waiting for them to lose. That's the point. And I don't like the idea of the committee waiting for somebody to lose instead of continue to prove themselves the way that they are these other, quote, blue blood programs like OU, like Michigan. When was the last time Michigan played for a national title? When was the last time OU won a national title? When was the last time Texas won a national title? You have to go back to 2006 for the Big 12, right? Vince Young and the Texas Longhorns that win over USC. When was the last time anybody for the Pac-12 played for a title? Wasn't it USC? The idea that a conference is dominant, the idea that a conference is that good, instead of looking at the teams within that conference and deciding whether or not those teams are good enough, to me is so passé. This isn't 1995 anymore where it's OU and Nebraska competing every year for the Big 8 back then, right? And running all over KU, running all over Mizzou. These teams that were just not formidable. We're not talking about the 1970s, 80s, or even 90s anymore with Notre Dame. We're not talking about the 80s and 90s anymore with the University of Miami. What about Clemson? How good is the ACC really? The reality of it is simply this, and here's the point. We shouldn't be waiting for Cincinnati to lose. We shouldn't be waiting for a Central Florida or a UTSA or a Marshall or a Boise State or whomever to lose. We should be waiting for them to win the same way we are for everybody else so that way they can get their shot, because it's no worse than OU getting blown out, Michigan State not even scoring a point, Washington losing by 17. It should never be about conference. Don't give me this location. Because if you're going to play that game with Cincinnati, then you damn well be ready to play that game with OU and really the entire Big 12 and the entire Pac-12 and the entire ACC. you better be full on prepared to not show them any favorites. Why don't we just call it the SEC Invitational, since that's what it seems like the committee really wants to do? Why don't we just call it that? I mean, it might as well be the case. And I'm not saying that the SEC West is not potentially the best subdivision in all of college football. I think there are a lot of people that would concede to that notion. But in Central Florida, the year they go undefeated, beat a pretty good 10-2 Auburn football team. And didn't Central Florida, as a 10-2 football team a few years prior, beat a 12-1 Baylor team? I just don't understand the notion that because somebody's in a, quote, Power 5 conference, they wouldn't be able to last in any other conference. Does anybody really think, watching OU and Texas at this moment, that in even 4 years from now, they will be able to legitimately compete in the SEC? You are where you are, but where you are doesn't necessarily mean that you're not good enough. If you're legitimate, why not give them a shot? Again, reasons why I've said from the beginning, 12 to 16 teams in the college football playoff. You minimize the amount of games that you play during the season, right? You go back to like 9 regular season games, which, by the way, creates better competition. Every game is going to mean a lot more. You're going to see better out-of-conference games, okay? And we're not going to have Alabama and all these other teams being able to schedule Maine or whomever in the middle to late part of the season. And we'll talk about gaming the system. Boy, the SEC's top-notch. And I've been saying that for years. So the point of that is, thank you, Baylor. But we also need to start waiting for teams like UTSA and Cincinnati to win and win good instead of going, just I'm not who they play after that. It's not their fault Indiana ended up being a bad football team. A lot of people thought Penix Jr. was going to be able to come back, okay, from that injury last season and that they would be a solid football team. A lot of people really believe that. But it is what it is. We are where we are. And we'll see what happens as the season continues to play out. All right. On the NFL, a little late to this. Not really caring too much. In terms of being late, Odell Beckham Jr. Boy, what a ruckus that guy's caused. You know, I always said from the beginning, when the big trade happened and you know, he was going to Cleveland, that it was going to be about 2 things. Being in the locker room, how he was going to get along with those guys, and schematically what they were going to be able to do with him. If you get along good with the guys in the locker room, it's going to make playing around you a lot easier. And anybody who's ever been in one will tell you that. It is a second family. It is a place where there is an unspoken agreement of we don't talk about what happens outside of here. Now, unfortunately, the NFL being the league that it is, and really outside of maybe the NBA, the best that there is at it, maybe baseball. Man, a lot of people will say that Odell is the consummate guy in that locker room. Okay, now schematically, how does it work then? Do you know how to use the players that you have in front of you? And it just wasn't a good fit for Odell Beckham Jr. But I think for me, the main gripe was Ryan Clark getting on national television and going, well, you know, I don't like that move for Odell to go to the Rams because I want Odell to prove that he's still a top 10 or 15 receiver in this league. First of all, it's not your career, bro. John Elway covered that a long time ago when Bradshaw was all upset that Elway was doing what he was doing and not wanting to go play for the Colts, which, by the way, he was correct about his inclination about that team leaving. He knew that he was being lied to and that the organization really didn't have a clue about what they were doing. And so he chose not to risk it. And he ended up with another team and had one of the greatest careers in professional football history, especially at the quarterback position. In fact, there's only one quarterback that has been to more Super Bowls than John Elway, and that's Tom Brady. Only one has been to more Super Bowls than that guy. Think about that. He's been to more Super Bowls than Joe Montana. The decision he made was correct. And secondly, it's insulting to say still a top 10 or 15 receiver in this league. Are you what? Top 15 receiver in the NFL. Who's looking past top 5 in almost any position in the NFL? There's only 32 teams the last time I checked. I don't understand top 15. That's supposed to be a thing. If they know how to use them right, I mean, come on, you still got Kupp. You could create some chaos with Odell Beckham Jr. there. If anything, he'll serve as a great distraction, which is a part of being a team too. And when I say distraction, anybody who's ever been between the X's and O's knows that if you have a player who is still considered to be prolific, and I guarantee you he is still very much considered prolific in the eyes of just about every single football team in the NFL, there's no debate about that. Then that's going to leave room for other guys to make plays to where they won't be able to key so much in on Odell, and that's going to free him up in some one-on-one situations. This is football 101. So for anybody who's worried about Odell managing his own career how he sees fit, who cares what you think? It's not your career. And schematically, we'll see what happens with the Rams. I mean, they're not playing around. They get Von Miller. They get Odell. They're looking at this season. Believe me when I tell you, they're not thinking about 2 or 3 years down the road. They're thinking about right now. What can we do? And they did it. And that's what an organization is supposed to do. They're supposed to stack the roster. And they're supposed to get the best players available. But just because they're the best player available, it doesn't mean that they're the best fit for that team. Mid-season's going to be a little tough, more so offensively than it is going to be defensively. Defensively, you can let a Von Miller roam around and just make plays. Offensively, you've got to really set up a scheme, and you have to figure out how a guy is going to incorporate into that or how you can make adjustments at this time of the year. All right. So this is still kind of a thing, obviously. A lot of people are on Uncle Shay's head about this one and how he feels about the situation with Jokic. Look, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction, and let's keep it 100. If anybody doesn't think Jokic wasn't given a nice little love tap, then you got another thing coming. And we've all seen before from what we saw in the playoffs last year, Jokic is about that life, and the reigning MVP just really doesn't play that noise. He might look like he should be somewhere telling you why your RAM is no good on your computer or helping you fix your cell phone. But the dude's a solid athlete, and believe me when I tell you, and given the reaction from his family in that playoff game, I'm not really sure that that's the dude that I'd want to be trying to pick a fight with. I know the old saying is find the biggest, baddest mofo in the yard and let him have it and establish your dominance. But at that point in the game, it was so ridiculous to do that anyways that it really didn't even matter you trying to muscle your way in. So regardless, that's my 2 cents on that, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm not really one of those people that's worried about it. I think that Uncle Shay was right when he said that, the fines and suspension and all that really didn't seem to add up. This has been the Sync 57 Sports Show. The show is quick. The topics are short. And everything is to the point, although I did spend a little bit of time on college football. But, man, I love college football so much. What do you do, Thank you for tuning in. For anybody who's out there listening, you guys all have a great rest of your week. We're going to start doing this every Monday, and then, of course, your news updates are going to come every Friday. In the meantime, in between time, don't you dare scroll past.